I've logged into my Tinkercad account and I'm going to create a new design. So in this tutorial what we're going to do is just look at some of the orientation tools and some of the basic options, and then we'll get into modeling in a subsequent tutorial. So we're going to click on create new design. And what you get in Tinkercad is this workspace. Now obviously this is designed for a 3D printing program, but you can use it to create 3D objects that you can import into, export from Tinkercad into other resources and tools like Workspaces, where you can then build your individual pieces together and get them to be animated. And if you look for one of our other tutorials, you can see how to do that. But we're looking at here at just being able to use the tools here. So we've got the work plane, and we can, it's by default 200 millimeters by 200 millimeters, and if you want to edit the grid you can change the size if you wish to into whichever construction unit you want to use. Obviously the bricks for the Minecraft option, but I'm going to stick at millimeters for this particular grid. So the whole work plane is here, and over on the left hand side, sorry, over here you've got a bunch of basic navigation tools. So you can click, you can go to the top view and it'll just switch around. You can center, you can then use this zoom function here to zoom in. It just keeps zooming in for you as far as you want to, or zoom out. And you can click on the perspective view if you want to, or back to the orthographic view. And here you can click on, so if you click on the top corner here, it'll take us to this kind of version here. You can see, click on the front, it gives us a front view, right view, but you can't see what's happening because there's no model. So at the moment we need to sort of click up on the top right hand corner here. And so if we just come back to here where we were at the beginning, this is our basic view. Over down here you've got snap to the grid. At the moment you've got some options here between 5 mils, which is quite coarse, and all the way down to 0.1 or off, and we'll use those later for some granular adjustments. And the other tools in the toolbar here are grayed out until we actually drag in some objects into the plane. So let's just look at some of the basic features. Let's drag a box out into the middle of the plane here. There it is. And on each object there are several markers we can look at. We can look at the width, we can look at the height, we can look at the width and the breadth, and also the height. We can scale things, we can rotate things, and we can lift things off of the plane. So let's just have a quick look at playing with those. You can also see the options over here on the left hand side allow us to actually do that in this sort of dialog box here. If you don't want that, you can minimize it and get rid of it. You can change the color of the shape, and this is only an indicator for you. Obviously if you're going to 3D print this, it's going to be the color of the filament that you're going to print out. If you're going to put it into another program like Workspaces, you can recolor it there as well. So it doesn't, the colors just don't really matter, but the option changing the colors is useful if you're trying to match different objects up, that so you can see their different colors and make sure they connect the way you want them to connect. So now we've got an object on the plane here, the work plane. We can start using some of the navigation tools. So I can just use, I'm working on a laptop here, so I'm using 2 fingers to zoom in and out here. So we can look at that, and we can use the orbit function. If I use right click and hold, or in this case on a scratch pad, 2 fingers and hold and press down, I can orbit around the whole object like this. So I'm orbiting around so I can see my object in any plane that I want to, and I'm just keeping my fingers pressed and moving around the scratch pad again with 2 fingers pressed, acting like a right click on a mouse. We can zoom in and zoom out, so that this is a good way for us to actually navigate all the way into our object. We can use the shift, if we press the shift key and use the 2 finger function again, we can move and make sure you don't click the object, and click on the work plane. We can pan left and right, so it allows us to center our object or a part of our object into the work plane that we want to work in. And so now I can use zoom in and out again. I can use the 2 finger orbit tool, which allows us to organize our way around the object. So let's get into some basic editing of the object here. Let's click on this. If I click on here and I press shift and I want to move it, it moves, it scales uniformly. So I'm pressing the shift key and holding on the corner key, and it's going to scale uniformly there. So it's both sides are going to, basically it's going to remain a cuboid. If we click on here, these are 17. If we click on here, this should still be 17. And that was all done by clicking on a corner object when it goes red. Now if I just click on here and move this, I can now compress it. And you can click on each of those objects if you want that to be exactly 13.3 millimeters, and press return. It will make it exactly 13.3. If you want this to be 4 millimeters, it'll make it so, and you click on this one and you want to make this 10 millimeters, you can click on the object and click 10, and so now we have got the object exactly the size that we want it to be. We have these rotate functions around the different axes. If we want to rotate this around the horizontal plane or the vertical plane, or well, the X and Y and Z axis. If we click on this and click on the object and drag out, we can see that we can rotate, and if we zoom in I'll show you that we can actually, this is going up in 1 degree segments, but the further into the center that you are, it does it in greater chunks, but it doesn't really matter. If you want it to move to minus 72, just type that in and it will switch around for you. So if we come back to the top view here and zoom right the way in, and I'm going to use my shift and click function to put myself right over the top of it. There we go, select. So you can use the blue line here, it moves in 22 degree segments. Use this line here and it moves in 1 degree segments. So you can just chunk it round by using the inner scale rather than the outer scale. And so what we can look at here, what we're looking at here is the features, the basic features of a shape. So before we move on to other features in the toolbar with other blocks, there's one more thing I want to show you. So I'm just going to orbit around so you can actually see this. So when you click an object, there is the grab handles at each of the corners or on the sides. If you want to move that plane, you can move in the direction that's going to move in. But this arrow, pointing arrow here at the top here is very important. And if you click this, it will lift your object and it gives you a measurement to tell you how far above the plane you are. So if you want to sculpt an object and then put it on top of something else, or if you want to make your object go through the plane, so you can see we're now minus 2 millimeters below the plane. And obviously if you're 3D printing, that's very important because it'll only print as far as the printing surface. So you need to make sure that your object is on the plane when you start printing. If it's floating above it, it's not going to work. So these are some important checks you need to make sure that before you start 3D printing that your object is actually sitting on the work plane. But if you need to combine objects together, which we're going to do in a moment, you need to know that you can lift your objects up and down. So we'll just leave this here on the plane, and we will now have a look at some of these other objects. Let's just drag another box out. I'll just zoom out a little bit. Just drag another box out here. So let's just say, for example, we wanted to, I'm just going to make this a bit smaller, just some sort of random size. Let's just say, for example, we wanted to align these two boxes together. So we've got this, we just made two boxes and we want to sort them out. What we can do is you can either move the red one to the green one or the green one to the red one. So depending which you click on first, I'm going to click on this one and then click. So we've got both selected. So I use the shift key to select both of them. And then over on the top here, this menu now becomes visible. If we click on this object here, we can now see that we've got some orientation objects going on here. So now I want to click here, and it's going to move this together, and we can, if we wanted to, there we go, they're in line with each other. Yeah, that's all good. And we could make it align with the top. So it's now floating, or the middle of the top. So if we click on here, click off, now we see that our object is aligned with the top. But our object, our green object remained the same, and our red object moved to the center of where we wanted it to move to. So the align function is a good tool to get allow you to move things exactly to where you want them to be. So let's just move this again. Let's say I wanted this, click on here, shift, and I want it aligned with the center. There it is. It's now aligned with the center of the green box. And that's a really useful tool for us. So let's just see what else we can do. So that's allowed us to align this box here in the center. And so by using simple shapes, we can combine them together to make more complex ones. So when you click on an object, you can either select it to be a solid or a hole. So let's use this the green box is our shape that we're beginning to sculpt, and let's use this red box here to create some to use it to create a modeling opportunity. So I'm just going to drag this through. Now as I moved it, it got messed around, so let's just click on here, shift, click on the red one, and just make sure they're aligned the way we want them to be. Yeah, it did get knocked slightly. Now I just want to make sure this comes up a little bit, so it's up through the top. There we go. And I'm going to, so now I've intersected this object. Now by that allows me to start making using this red cube or red cuboid to start using to start cutting shapes into the green object. So if I select both of them now, like this, I can, sorry, excuse me, click on the red box first and change it from a solid to a hole. It now becomes a hole, but nothing's actually happened. But if I select them both and now use this feature in the toolbar up here and click on group, it will group the hole with the green and cut out the red bit. Watch this. There. So I've now used my red object to cut a hole in the green object, so making a nice easy cut for us.